Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we really get into the information you've shared with us, cutting through the noise to find those essential insights. Today, we're looking at a situation that's unfolding very rapidly, a rather crucial deep dive into events in the Middle East.
Precisely. The sources you've provided give us a stark and remarkably clear timeline of recent military actions and the geopolitical shifts that are following. We're focusing today on the escalating conflict, specifically between Iran and Israel, and significantly the recent entry of the United States into this very complex picture.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack that sequence of events, try to understand the reported human cost, which is significant, and explore the global reactions and, well, what might happen next. And all of this comes directly from the material we have in front of us. We'll lay out the facts as presented without adding our own endorsement, but with clear explanations so you can grasp the full picture. Okay, let's begin then. Where did this specific open conflict start? The sources point to June 13th, 2025, Israel initiating attacks. What exactly did those first strikes involve?
Yes, June 13th. What's salient, I think, is the nature of these initial Israeli actions. The documents detail attacks on key Iranian nuclear sites. Natanz and Fordow are specifically mentioned. But it's also noted, interestingly, that drones were apparently deployed inside Iran even before these main strikes, suggesting perhaps some groundwork being laid.
So reconnaissance or maybe more. And it wasn't just facilities then. The sources highlight another element, don't they?
Indeed. Crucially, the material states that Israel also focused on eliminating top military leadership. Several senior IRGC commanders, that's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, were reportedly killed. So this combination, hitting strategic sites and targeting commanders, that really marked the formal start of open warfare between them, according to these documents, a clear escalation.
Right, a very clear and deliberate escalation. So with Israel acting so decisively, Iran's response, it followed quickly.
Extremely quickly and severely. Following those Israeli strikes, Iran retaliated. The sources say they fired missiles and drones at major Israeli cities. Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Bat Yam are specifically listed as targets. So bringing the conflict directly to population centers.
And the human cost, even in just those first days, it's quite sobering when you look at the figures reported.
It is, tragically so. It really brings home the immediate impact. As of June 20th, just a week in, the sources report over 600 people had died in Iran, over 2,000 injured. In Israel, the toll was also significant, around 24 reported killed and hundreds wounded. These numbers, they underscore the devastating reality of this kind of escalation on ordinary lives.
Okay, so a very intense back and forth. And then the situation escalates further, drawing in another major power, the U.S. Could the sources indicate tensions spiked after that June 13th strike, leading to a pivotal U.S. decision?
A very pivotal moment.
Yeah.
By late June, the U.S. decided to actively join the conflict. The documents state that on June 22, 2025, President Trump ordered the U.S. military to launch its own attacks. And the targets were, again, Iran's nuclear facilities, Fordow, Natanz, and this time Isfahan was also included. A significant broadening of the targets.
And this specific U.S. military action, it was given quite a memorable name, wasn't it?
It was, yes. The mission used B-2 stealth bombers and Tomahawk missiles, and it was officially named Operation Midnight Hammer.
Operation Midnight Hammer. And the sources offer some fascinating details about how this was carried out, almost like an operational debrief.
They really do. It paints a picture of a highly coordinated secret mission. Executed overnight on June 22nd, 7 B-2 Spirit bombers flying all the way from Whiteman Air Force Base in the U.S. Apparently, other bombers were used as decoys, too, to help ensure the B-2s got through. Classic deception tactics. The B-2s dropped 14 bunker buster bombs, the GBU-57 MOPs on Fordow and Natanz, those deep underground sites. And at the same time, a submarine launched about 30 Tomahawk missiles aimed at Isfahan. It speaks to a very high level of technological capability and planning.
A truly complex operation, and after something of that scale, there was an official announcement from the Pentagon.
Yes, the very next morning, June 23rd. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and General Dan Kane held a briefing. They described it as the largest B-2 mission ever conducted, which is quite a statement.
Huh.
And they highlighted the use of deception tactics.
And their assessment of the damage inflicted, what did they claim?
They claimed the mission caused extremely severe damage to those targeted nuclear sites. The briefing also gave specific numbers: 125 U.S. aircraft involved in total, using over 75 precision bombs. And crucially for them, they reported 0 losses of U.S. aircraft or personnel.
So from the U.S. and Israeli perspective, what was the declared outcome of these combined efforts?
Well, the sources state that both the U.S. and Israel declared the strikes a spectacular success. They asserted that Iran's nuclear sites were essentially destroyed, though they did add a note that the full damage assessment was still ongoing. A message of decisive action, clearly.
Now, an action like this involving the U.S. directly attacking Iranian soil alongside Israel, it must have triggered major international reactions. What did the sources say about that?
Oh, absolutely. The global reaction was strong and immediate. The United Nations, many individual countries, they called for calm. There was, significant fear of wider war erupting, a lot of concern about regional stability and perhaps where this could lead globally.
And Iran's official position after being hit by both Israel and the U.S.
Unsurprisingly, strong condemnation. Iran called the strikes a crossing of a red line. And crucially, they immediately vowed revenge. This vow, you see, it adds a very dangerous new dimension. It signals this isn't over.
And this is where the Strait of Hormuz comes into the picture, isn't it? A potential point of retaliation with massive global impact.
Exactly. This is a critical point and one that could directly affect you, our listener, wherever you are. In response to the attacks, Iran has now threatened to block the Strait of Hormuz. And just for context, this narrow waterway is absolutely vital. It's one of the world's most important choke points for oil and gas shipping.
Just how important is it? Can you give us a sense of the scale involved based on the sources?
The figures are quite staggering. Nearly 17 million barrels of oil pass through the strait every single day. 17 million. Plus huge amounts of liquefied natural gas. It accounts for, well, the sources say over 20% of the entire world's oil trade moving through that one narrow strait.
20%. So the consequences, if Iran actually did block it, what do the experts cited in our sources warn could happen?
The warnings are severe. Experts suggest a blockade could trigger a global economic loss in the hundreds of billions of dollars. Hundreds of billions.
Yeah.
Oil prices could skyrocket, potentially above $150 per barrel. That would mean widespread fuel shortages, and it would almost certainly trigger significant global inflation. It's a very clear illustration of how a regional conflict, particularly in that part of the world, can have immediate, very tangible, and severe economic consequences for everyone right across the planet.
So we've traced a really rapid sequence of events here. Israel's initial strikes, Iran's retaliation, the major U.S. intervention with Operation Midnight Hammer, and now this looming global economic threat centered on the Strait of Hormuz.
Yes, we've seen how regional tensions can quickly pull in global powers and how military actions, even if claimed as successful, can have these far-reaching economic ripple effects that impact all of us. The interconnectedness is undeniable.
So as you process all this information, here's something perhaps to reflect on. Given this immense global economic dependence on choke points like Hormuz, what ethical responsibilities do major powers actually bear when their military decisions risk causing such widespread economic hardship far beyond the immediate conflict zone? A profound question, I think.